And you're unmuted.
It's 6:30. Want to welcome everybody to our select board meeting for April 15th, 2025. This is our second meeting so far. We've already done the Pledge of Allegiance. So we will have an agenda that we'll follow. We would like to add one agenda item under new business after agenda item number 5, and that is a discussion of an Act 181 letter, which you all should have gotten by email. So we'll start out with the select board and town manager roles. Attorney Jim Carroll.
If you're going to do that, you need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we do need a motion to modify the agenda.
So moved.
Peter's made the motion. Do I have a second?
No. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this at this point?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment about it, and I understand why we're bringing it up because it is in the news and it's pretty controversial what's going on and stuff. But it's an important topic because there are a lot of people that are involved with it also and would like to weigh in on it and stuff. And when we do it this way, we don't offer the public the chance to be involved with the conversations.
If you don't want to do it this quickly, we can add it to the May agenda.
There were some changes today at the legislative level, and it looks like they're going to be tossing out the rural road and also tossing out the tier 3. I realize that some of this is talking about complete repeal, but I think it's a discussion that we should have with the public involved and warned, because there is no urgency to this either at this point, because there's still 2 different regional development corporation meetings that we have regarding this also.
I second it because I think it is a good thing for us to talk about. I'd like to have the discussion about whether we want to send a letter and what we want to be in that letter. But I agree that it is the kind of thing that I think feels better if it's warned in advance, so that if people have feelings about it and somebody has feelings about everything.
Right.
Do you have a sense that this is somehow important that we do that today rather than at the next meeting?
Not necessarily. I drafted the letter because I've seen others and I thought it would be a good idea for us to have that discussion.
Yeah.
And my recommendation would be, let's add this to agenda and then we can talk about some of the concerns that you had and talk about putting it on a future agenda. That would be my recommendation, but I'm open to whatever the board.
And I think the reason for this is because of this agenda, there is no new business on this agenda. So that's kind of also the part of the reason to add it or add new business so that you can then discuss the next agenda. That's not on this agenda.
I have a long track record of saying that I don't think we should add anything to an agenda unless it's absolutely imperative. Because I think just what Lauren said is that we need to give the public the opportunity to warn this and to know that we're going to talk about it, because there certainly will be public input.
Sure. Yeah.
So I would prefer not to do this tonight.
Okay. Well, I have a motion and a second, so I'll ask for voting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I would say aye also. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so the nays have it.
Right.
So we will not discuss this later on.
So
It's just that there's a timeline that we won't meet to discuss this again for 3 weeks, and by which time the legislature will have decided. That was mine while I was thinking of that. But you voted, we continue on.
I'm fine with putting it on a new business.
You'd like to put it
Future
on the
agenda.
next.
And whether the legislature acts before then or not, that could be fine to have a discussion.
And I will be at a VLCT board meeting tomorrow. Actually, I'll be in Montpelier tomorrow, so I will get an update on where the law is at from Josh.
Okay. Thank you. Next is the select board and town manager roles. Attorney Jim Carroll has joined us, and Jim, take it away.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. It's good to see you all. So I did send to Julie a bunch of documents.
Yes, you
Which
did.
I have told them all they did not need to
All
review.
retested on multiple guests.
Including the
Questions.
200-page handbook.
Yeah, like the 200-page handbook, exactly. But what I was really trying to do was just put together some of the reference materials that I use when questions are asked of me about, roles perhaps between the manager and the select board. They don't come up that often, but always good to visit that. But these are some of the very basic statutes, by no means all of the statutes. Title 24 is replete with all kinds of authorities, limitations on authorities, and instructions about how select boards are to act under certain circumstances, as well as town manager. But these are the very basic ones that, I go back to time and time again that answer many of the questions that come up when I'm asked a question of municipal law, which at this point, given my 40, I don't know how many years, is pretty much all I'm doing at this stage, which is odd. I didn't expect to become a municipal lawyer when I got out of law school. I certainly didn't expect to be representing cops when I got out of law school. That was nowhere on my horizon. But here I am, and that's what's evolved over time. And I love it. I love the work because it's where the rubber hits the road. It really is. And what you all do here is, I think, from the standpoint of impact of your citizens, I think it's impactful government. So I have put together just materials that hopefully you've got electronically, that at some point in the future, if things come up, at least there's some reference guidance. The first of which, this huge document, is prepared by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And I don't know that you can do much better from the standpoint of having a handbook than what the league has put together and described in much more depth and deep detail than we're going to go through here today. So we're not really going to talk about the handbook itself or get quizzed on the handbook, but I did think it would be a good idea for you all to have. And I didn't know whether that's something that just gets handed to you as part of becoming a select board member or not, but it's a great reference tool. If you're having questions and you're sitting home and you're wondering what's going on.
And you can't sleep.
And you can't sleep. You really need to sleep. It will put you to sleep pretty fast.
Just a quick question on this. I noticed the copyright on this, the latest one is 2009. Is it that good that it hasn't needed to have any revisions?
It's actually been revised since then. I think the copyright is there.
Ask about that.
Yeah, no, it's been,
I'll get the most up to date for you.
yeah.
I think they're actually working on another revision, which
Yeah.
is why I didn't grab that one yet. I think there's one yet to come.
Yeah.
So we'll grab you that. And
Um,
Arnie's goes back before 2009, I think.
No,
back when they
it's a little
bound
after. It comes in a red folder.
Back when they were bound.
But the reality is, things haven't really, in terms of the basic structure and outline of what a select board does and what a
Hasn't
manager
changed
does,
that much.
it really just hasn't changed that much. So I'm sure this has been updated in particulars, particularly with regard to the conflict of interest statute that just got adopted and a few other things that would have come up. But it's a real useful tool. The other thing, I just quickly looked at the descriptions that are actually on your website about what a town manager and what a select board does. And it says the select board is the legislative body of the town and enacts ordinances and regulations as required for the health, safety, welfare, you could add convenience of the residents, and prepares annual budgets and approval for the voters at town meeting. There's of course a lot more, but that's probably not from the standpoint of interfacing with the public, not a bad description. You would also want to add to that the select board, in addition to being the principal legislative body of the town, performs certain administrative functions. So if you think about the three parts of government, then there are definitely some administrative components, particularly when it comes to finance and other things that you're going to be asked to perform. And another sometimes very big one is to act in a quasi-judicial capacity. So at times in one meeting, you could be asked to pass an ordinance, take some administrative action, and then, hear a dog complaint or a highway proceeding or whatever. So in one meeting, you could be engaged in all three processes: the judiciary, the legislative, and the administrative. And that's what's been delegated to you. Part of what is delegated to you then got turned around by your citizens and redelegated to you, to Julie, as the town manager. And most of that involves the administrative component, the oversight, basically, of the departments and functioning of the town. Got rerouted to Julie, and we can talk a little bit more about that. It's also, and I know she likes this, she's the sewage officer.
Love it. It's the title,
Always a
but
good
it's
one.
on my desk.
There are days.
There are days. Some are better than others.
Absolutely. Today was one of them. Just all sewage.
Also the assistant health officer and the delinquent tax collector, which we're
Love that
gonna,
one too.
which we're about to start embarking on. The other functions that you all do engage in is that you're also the local board of health, which is kind of a separate board, but the same board. You're just flipping hats, basically. And as a local board of health, you're being asked to administer the state's Title 18 health regulations as the local board of health, without a whole lot of assistance or help from the state of Vermont through the Department of Health, which has been frustrating, frankly. Sometimes when you got a health issue, you got a nuisance issue, you got a real bad situation, and you go for assistance. I mean, I think they try, but they're overwhelmed themselves. So it's hard for Julie as the health officer.
I am not the health officer.
The
I've delegated that to
assistant you
my,
have.
no, I'm none of it.
Well, way to go, Julie.
My deputy EMS chief is my health
Yeah,
officer.
that's, that can be a very tough situation to be in. But they will be coming to you to act as a quasi judicial local board of health in the event that they're issuing health orders or emergency health orders. All right, so moving on to the basic structure. Probably this is old news, but if it is, great. Vermont is what's called a Dillon's rule state, which means we are not a home rule state. And what that means is that all authority is delegated from the state down to municipalities. Doesn't come from municipalities up to the state. So under our Constitution, the state legislature basically is conferred all of the authority that municipalities have. And then it's up to them to redelegate that authority to municipalities, including the right to charter towns and set up towns. But everything you do, you can only do because the statute tells you that you can do. There's enabling legislation that provides specific authority for you to act. Or it's implied, based on the express authority you're given, that you should have other authorities in order to effectuate the express authority that you've been given, or it's necessary to effectuate the authority that you've been given. So every time you act, there's the potential for someone to say you're not enabled to take that action or that activity, because it's up to us, as I should say, you as board members, me assisting you, to find the authority to do what it is that you're looking to do in any particular circumstance. That's Dillon's rule. Home rule is the opposite, which is that basically the Constitution sets up these little municipalities or subgovernments, and authority flows up from there. So towns can do everything they want to do unless the legislature has told them they can't do it. So it's kind of the flip of what we have here. So that's just a primer on that and some of the constitutional provisions and some case law in this charters and Dillon's rule thing. That's really the only thing.
Jim, are most of the states in the country Dillon or the other way around?
Most, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to.
We looked it up once. I want to say there were 17 Dillon's rule states. That's a
Mr.
stretch
Home-
for my memory, but that's the number that comes.
That's
to
kind of in the back of my memory too, but I can't say for sure. So I don't really know. We are definitely Dillon's. Definitely. Then just moving on, there's a statutory section, just so you're aware of it, section 172, which says that you as a board can't do anything outside of your joint authority to act. And that means that there has to be a concurrence of 3 or more to constitute a majority. There's also quorum requirements, obviously, so you need to have at least 3 of you here and present to do anything. You got to be doing everything in connection with the open meetings laws and with due notice, basically, which you've all just been dealing with and talking about. And have handled beautifully, I got to say, over the years. But joint authority is conferred on all of you, not any one of you individually. Now, you may be delegated from time to time to do some sort of administrative tasks and that sort of thing, but you're not going to be passing any kind of legislative or exercising any legislative authority without all of you here, or being able to do something in a quasi judicial capacity without there being a majority vote. Basic stuff. So the statute that confers authority on the select board that came from the legislature is of this one sentence that says that you'll have all the general supervision of the affairs of the town and shall cause to be performed all duties required of towns and town school districts. That was your old, not committed by law to the care of any particular officer. So this is basically the I'll call it a garbage pail, out of which all authority is conferred upon you to act as a municipality that isn't otherwise delegated in some other place. So if there's an absence of authority, or it's unclear where that authority is, it resides in the select. All right. And that's what that section 872 is. It then goes on to be a lot more specific in the enumeration of powers clause, which is also in a statute that's in your 2291, which provides specific regulatory powers to a municipality. So this is a delegation of authority that's conferred statutorily upon municipalities to act, and it's pretty broad. There's a great deal of authority that exists to operate and basically run a municipality and a town. Including, constituting what kinds of public nuisance, and to create ordinances. So there's a whole statute dealing with how you create ordinances, but it confers that authority on you as a select board to do that.
Name streets too,
Name streets. There's some really great ones, dealing with places of public alcohol consumption and, probably more prevalent down in Texas than it is here in Vermont. But you never know.
Wherever you want.
Yeah. So there's some pretty broad authority, but this is just the basic enumeration of powers. There's a lot of other authorities that are conferred in Title 24. So this is not the limit of authorities that are conferred. It's just kind of the basic baseline of authorities that get conferred.
Including but not limited to. I think that's the-
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So just because it isn't stated here doesn't mean that you don't have the authority that's conferred in some other location, and even the duty in some other location to, in fact, exercise that authority under certain circumstances. So that's just a basic statute for you to have to turn to if anybody's got a question about that.
Yeah, just a quick question, because this is pertinent right now. To regulate the location, installation, maintenance, repair, and removal of utility poles, wires, and conduits. How much authority do we have with the utility for that?
Not a lot.
That's cool.
Or we would have used it.
Not a lot.
Worth asking. All right,
Yeah,
sorry.
and that comes under the heading, so it's
Try.
conferred on you, but it also comes under the heading of
Public
preemption.
service.
Yeah, of you being preempted in certain areas. So if there are statutes that are more specific in terms of the authority that it confers, like for
Certificates of
instance,
public good.
for certificates of public good, or the exercise of authority over utilities, they giveth and they taketh away. Yeah, so there's a lot of circumstances under which that's the case as well.
All right.
And a lot of these other authorities that are conferred on you, for instance, for solar panels and solar siting, they give you some authority, but not a lot. So there's some authorities that are conferred. It is, it's a CPG, but there are some ways in which towns can be impactful and participate in that, but it's very limited.
Mhm.
Yeah, they don't want you getting into the overall power grid.
And zone.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in Title 19, just because sometimes it becomes a topic, there's a whole lot of duties in addition to authorities that are conferred over highways, over town highways. And things that have to happen in connection with town highways, including your authority to lay out a road, to reclassify, to alter, or to basically revoke a road or discontinue. So there's a bunch of authorities, and town highways are under the town's control. State highways obviously under the state's control. This gets into the authority also dealing with condemnation, which exists in connection not only with town highways, but if a building is needed or sewage plant or some other facility for the public good. There's some authorities with very specific requirements as to what is needed for necessity and for just compensation in connection with that. That gets into a whole lot of issues that I think we've dealt with from time to time. But town highways definitely something that's within the select board's bailiwick. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are charters which are specific to municipalities, which are authorities that are conferred upon specific municipalities. And Chester does have a charter. That charter and the town's powers and the authority of the select board looks an awful lot like the general authorities that are conferred by statute, but they are in here. But there are some other good ones like restrained use of rockets and squids, whatever that is, and firecrackers. Inordinate driving or riding in streets. There's some other, this is Chester's. So, this is horse and buggy days.
That's our charter that you're.
This is, yep. So there actually are a few other powers and authorities that are conferred. A lot of charters, which is not the case for Chester, but a lot of other charters confer, particularly in connection with cities, the authority to tax on a limited basis, which I don't see in your
We
charter.
don't have that.
I've never seen our charter.
You haven't?
I did, I,
Oh, I don't.
Well,
I will
it's
email it
it's
to
in
you.
your materials.
Oh, he sent it to you guys.
Yeah,
What is it titled?
it's entitled Appendix of Municipal Charters, Merger of the Village and Town of Chester, which I think happened in 1957. That was,
I don't think I got
Okay,
it.
I will send it.
Okay.
I will send it.
I'm sorry, that was probably my bad not getting that to you, but yeah, there is a charter.
I can send it to
Cool.
you guys.
What to do with the buggies.
Yeah, no,
Right?
this is great reading, actually.
It is. It's interesting to see the language.
It's in here too.
Yeah. But it contemplates, and some of this was authorities that were being conferred prior to their being generally conferred on municipalities, like setting up a sewer system, a water system, doing those sorts of things, which are now part of the general authorities that are conferred by statute. And most of it, I think, it was a result of the merger of the village and the town, and the village having authorities that then got merged into the town, so the town could assume and take those actions and duties over. You also have the authority, both by charter and by statute, to have a police department, fire department, EMS, and those sorts of issues. All right. Then the citizens, in their wisdom, decided to have a management form of government, which a lot of towns are doing, particularly with towns that are your size, because things are getting too complicated, basically for a board to try to self-administer and supervise an entire municipality, having to get together and act under joint authority to do anything by way of administration. So wisely, it would seem, Julie, the voters,
They
it was
did it
put to
just
the
for me.
voters to adopt a town management form of government. And this is one of those situations where what the statute gives, the select board then takes away and confers on the town manager upon approval by the citizens of a management form of government. And you'll see the language is almost identical. Selected special reference to, oh, by the way, the manager is supposed to be selected with special reference to his or her education, training,
What's that?
and experience. I'm sorry, section 1233 of the Vermont
Chapter
statute.
37.
Yeah, chapter 37, it's within there. And having appointed a town manager, that's authority that's retained and conferred upon the select board. The authority also extends to remove the town manager, but only for cause. So just cause would be required for the board on its own motion or the motion of anybody else to decide whether or not just cause exists. The norm in the state of Vermont is any employment relationship is at will. That's the presumption, but it is an evidentiary presumption. It's a presumption that anytime someone is retained or hired in the state of Vermont, they are employed at will, meaning they can be terminated at any point in time for any reason or no reason whatsoever. So you don't need just cause to do that termination. In connection with the statutes and certain other statutes that exist in Title 24, some positions are statutorily set up so that there are positions where you can only terminate for cause. One of them is the town manager. And the other is the zoning administrator. Also the chief of police and police officers in general. And the idea is that these should not be politicized positions. These should be positions, in fact, it's pretty clear that the town manager's position is not one where politics should play a role in retaining or hiring a town manager. So that they are insulated to some degree from whatever political whims or desires a select board might, under its joint authority, have. So if you're going to be terminating prior to their term of employment, you can set a term of employment for a town manager and for others, but you cannot terminate within that term of employment unless there's just cause.
And that's a pretty high bar for a just cause.
It is what it tends to do. And by the way, if that situation ever comes up, we can talk a little bit about that at this point too. What that's going to do is require from you that you provide, because we're dealing with a public employee who has rights not to be terminated except for just cause. That creates an overlay of constitutional requirements that have to be minimally met before you as a board can decide to terminate. We'll just call it a town manager. Should we choose someone else, Julie? Like,
It's fine.
The
It's all
sewer
good.
warden.
Service officer. There you go. I'm good. It's okay. You
Yeah.
can use my position. It's okay.
But what that means is that you just can't terminate. You have to hold a hearing, and you have to basically provide an opportunity for the town manager or whoever the employee is to be able to come before you and have an opportunity to answer to whatever just cause claims you happen to have. And that means you are now putting yourself in a quasi judicial position. So you're acting kind of as a judicial officers, wanting to be sure that you're creating a record, that you're providing an adequate opportunity, that there's adequate notice of what the terms of the just cause termination might be, and that you come to it with a free mind, listen to the evidence that's being provided, and make your decision based on the information that's put in front of you.
That sounds like a conflict, though. If the select board is the one that's making that motion, how are they supposed to keep an
Yeah.
open, clear mind about making a decision?
It is internally conflicted, but there's nobody else to do it. So what really has to happen is, and what typically does happen under the circumstances, is if the select board, for whatever reason, believes that it's appropriate to initiate a proceeding, they should not be terminating anybody until a proceeding has occurred. And at the point of initiation, it's a question of, we believe that there might be some just cause here, and we want to initiate a hearing to hear the evidence and the information, and we are inviting you, as whatever municipal person you are, to come forward and explain why just cause does not exist and what the reasons and explanations are for whatever action or activity it was that seems to be the problem. But you're right, it's difficult under those circumstances, but keep in mind that your role. There may be circumstances, for instance, where you're the individual on the board who's coming up and saying, you know what, we gotta do this or we gotta do that. The rest of the board may not necessarily agree. And at some point in time, you may have to decide whether or not to recuse yourself because you're the principal informant or the person providing the testimony and the evidence that might demonstrate some sort of just cause. So when these situations happen, it's time for everybody to stop and back it up a little bit and get organized in terms of how this should proceed in an organized fashion. And sometimes that means hiring more than one lawyer to be involved in the process. So now the board gets a lawyer basically to assist them through the due process hearing, can assist questions that board members may have about whether they should recuse themselves or not recuse themselves. Hopefully that doesn't mean more than two persons recusing themselves because now you've got a quorum issue that you need to address. So at that point, usually the safest and best thing to do is to back up, have the board get a lawyer. Whoever the employee is may have an attorney dealing with it. And the town may also decide to have an attorney who's actually basically prosecuting the case, who's putting the information in front of the board. Those are decisions to be made at the time about how many attorneys might be needed to deal with it. It's much more complicated. Employment situations are at the public level than they are in the private sector. And that's because there's these rights and they're property rights. The idea is that you have a property right in your job because it can't be terminated except for just cause. And once a judge, federal court judge, usually decides that a property interest in the job exists, now there's an overlay of due process before you deprive someone of that property interest. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So now you have to have a hearing. You have to have a hearing of some kind to be able to deal with that. That's no different than all of the other circumstances where you're acting as a quasi judicial body. It can happen as a board of health. You know, you're trying to shut somebody down or shut down a business or whatever it might happen to be. You as a board might need some assistance to help get through the hearing process. In addition to whoever has been delegated, Julie as the local health officer, might need some assistance in presenting the case to you as a board.
That just spurred an interesting question in my mind. So places I've lived before, the state has a board of health. They inspect restaurants and any place that serves food. We don't have that here.
No,
That's up to the town?
no,
No.
no. I mean, the local health officer is really dealing mostly, and it can, I should say, it probably can. But if it's a restaurant situation where there's licensure through the state, you know, and a certain number of persons allowed, and you know, there's fire issues and fire safety issues and all of that, that gets pretty heavily regulated at the state level. So that you would expect that if a local health officer is seeing problems there, they might want to communicate with the regulatory agency dealing with that to, you know, figure out who's on first and who's going to be dealing with that. It would be the Department of Health for the most part.
Apparently, I mean, is invisible.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're more tenacious about some things than they are others.
Yeah. So if you had a complaint of unsanitary food situation.
Yeah, that's usually going to get on their radar.
I'm not saying that we have that, just to be clear, but.
Yeah. Thank you,
It's
Tim.
just a point of.
No accusations being made here. But they tend to get more of a response, I would say. The things that get difficult usually are properties that for whatever reason have become really derelict. Residential properties.
We've been through a couple of them.
You know, situations that are really getting to the point where they're public health issues, not just individualized health issues. You know, there's rodent vectors and there's other issues. Yeah, it's become something of a public nature and it's kind of emergent. That's usually when a local health department, they'll answer the calls and they'll talk to the local health officer and they do some training But they're really relying on the local health officer usually to marshal whatever needs to be marshaled to prove to you all as a Board of Health that there's a really emergent situation going on. So we got sidetracked on that one. That's
Sorry.
good. No, it's all good. No, not the Board of Health, just the whole notion of how a board such as yourself holds a hearing in the public context is far more detailed and complicated than it is in the private sector.
And you listed the town manager, the police chief. There's certain employees that fall under that and the
Yeah,
rest don't.
there are. I mean, those are usually the biggies. The other possibility is that someone has been retained or hired by the town, and the basic relationship of at will has been altered because of the contract that's been offered to a particular individual. So the town, for instance, wants to hire, I don't know, a health officer, wants to hire someone in the planning department.
Contractual basis.
Yeah, and the town really wants that person to come work, so they're willing to basically give a term for that person to come work and be employed. That has now altered the basic assumption that there's at-will employment. And now you have just cause if you're going to be terminating prior to the end of that term. And usually those contracts specify what happens prior to that term, and there's usually some severance or some other.
That makes sense, like any employment contract. Yeah.
Right. There's also, since we're on the topic, reasons, even though the basic assumption is at will, there are reasons why employees cannot be terminated by statute, both state and federal. You must have, I don't know how many times you must have run into this, but yeah, I'll bet. In Vermont, there are certain civil rights statutes dealing with employment that says you as an employer cannot do certain things. You can't discriminate, for all the basic reasons. And in Vermont has all of the basic reasons. Vermont has incorporated all of them to its credit. You can't retaliate. You can't terminate someone in retaliation for their blowing the whistle, for being a whistleblower. There's First Amendment rights that might attach to a person who is saying, I got terminated not because I'm a bad employee, but because I opened my mouth and I talked on a matter of political importance to me and the community. Or I blew the whistle on somebody who was having an affair, doing this, doing that, or you can't terminate someone for retaliating. So there are certain reasons why you cannot terminate, but other than that, there's at-will employment, which, by the way, can also get altered sometimes based on your employment manual, depending upon how much is provided to the employee by way of safeguards prior to termination, what your disciplinary process is.
It's essentially a contract with the employee.
Well, that's the theory.
Yeah.
And it's an implied contract because almost all employee manuals say appropriately, this does not create a contract. And then it goes forward to say, but if there's disciplinary stuff, here's what we'll
It's
do.
in writing.
All right.
Now they know how to get rid of me.
Yeah, sorry about
And move
that.
on. No, you're fine. As long as I do my job.
Yeah, well, got way off on that one.
Wait till the end of the contract.
There you go.
Yeah. So going to the next statute, which is 1235 in that chapter 37, you may recall that you were given the general supervision of the affairs of the town, but you'll see in 1235 that if you have a town management form of government, now the town manager has the general supervision of the affairs of the town. The administrative head of all departments of the town shall be responsible for the efficient administration thereof. So that general authority to supervise basically the town and the administration of the town has now been conferred on the town manager, and it's the town manager's job and duty to perform those duties. You retain the ability as the hiring body to oversee that and oversee that the administrator is doing that job. But for the purposes of the day-to-day activities, it's really the town manager who should be delegated and given, and is in fact statutorily given the right and the obligation, the duty to perform those particular functions. And in that particular situations, I think Chester is actually uniquely lucky to have you, to have Julie, because I think that in my experience, there's always been a real basic understanding of where those roles are and at what point in time it's appropriate for you to step in and do your administrative oversight, review and job. But for Julie and or the town manager at hand to really be performing the daily duties of what's going on. That includes finances, that includes HR, employment issues and concerns. That includes collection of taxes. That includes all of the basic duties of the town, supervising the various departments, water, sewer, police, et cetera. Now, in the case of police, the chief has certain delegated authorities to conduct police operations and to administer the police department consistent with what the chief understands his limit or her limitations to be, to effectively follow the statutory guidelines for how law enforcement officers are supposed to be trained and how they're supposed to react, and that they go to the police academy, that they get their annual training, all of those sorts of things. That's delegated to the chief. But in terms of the overall functioning of the police department, its budget, how things, from an administrative standpoint occur, the hiring and firing of police officers and the chief, that all starts with the manager. So if there's, for instance, one of these employment issues, it's the manager that will be making the choice and decision about whether or not the manager should bring to the board's attention that, hey, I think I got a problem and we need to do something. So in some respects, that helps because it takes you out of that responsibility, the direct responsibility, and you're really relying on your town manager to be overseeing and making those decisions about, wow, something's got to happen here, either from a disciplinary standpoint or otherwise. You don't have, there is a union.
I have a police department union with no members in the union.
There you go. Well,
Come full circle.
yeah.
Yeah, we have a union with no
So there's that. There's also the union issues, which is another overlay, and obviously dealing with police departments. The same also is the case in the fire department, and a lot of fire departments, you have full-time members in the fire
We have
department.
a full-time chief.
8.
No, not at this point. I'm sorry. We have no full-time
No
fire
full-time
only
members. So we're really dealing with volunteers for the most part
They're part-time employees.
and part-time employees. Okay. Well, the employees, that's easy. Volunteers get a little.
Yeah, we don't have any
Well,
volunteers at this
okay.
point. They're all
All
considered
right.
part-time
All
employees.
right. So don't need, you don't need to go there then. So yeah, that's, and again, you have to go through the same process. So you're going to be asked to sit as a board in a quasi judicial capacity and hold a hearing. There's issues and questions about whether that hearing gets held in public and private. Some of that has to do with the choice of the individual employee. So there's a lot to consider and think about in connection
Would
with
that
holding
be
those
any
hearings.
employee in that situation could request a hearing or quasi judicial?
Well, most of the employees, I would say not. Most of the
Only those
employees.
key employees that we're
Yeah.
talking
Now,
about.
there are elected officials like town clerks,
Ours is appointed now.
appointed
Our
now.
clerk and treasurer are appointed. We have no elected officials at this point,
Oh
other than the select
my
board.
gosh, okay. Well, you'd think I'd know that after 40
It's
years.
relatively new.
Well, you do.
We wanted to hide it, to share
So-
with you.
So I guess that's not an issue then. I mean,
No.
if there were elected officials,
Right.
obviously that becomes a problem. They've been elected by the voters and you can't really do much about that, but different circumstances. No, not every employee who has at-will employment necessarily you're not obligated to give the federal constitutional requirements of a minimal due process hearing. But I defy you to find or come up with a situation where an employee has been terminated where they are not alleging that they have a due process right and a property interest in their job, it's invariable that they will allege that. And or that they have been terminated for reasons other than their performance, which almost always triggers an obligation to think about whether a due process hearing should be required. Because at the tail end of that, there's going to be a collateral action, more likely than not, a collateral suit that gets filed over the question of whether due process was provided or whether they've been terminated for an illegal reason. So many times, even with normal employees, a decision might be rationally made, let's have a hearing. That tends to eliminate the due process issue that comes up in these federal claims. All right, so
We actually ran into that a few years back.
We did have an employee that went through that process.
Yeah.
Yes, Connie was part of that with us.
Right.
Yeah.
all right, and then you go to 1236, which is basically a lot of the authorities that are conferred in those enumeration of powers have been thrown over to Julie to perform as part of her powers and duties in particular. The board does in 1237 retain the right to conduct an examination of various departments within the town, or an examination of the activities of them, to examine, to have oversight, basically, and to want to know more about what is going on in a particular area. But that should always, at least in my opinion, flow through the manager in terms of how that should get processed and dealt with. For a number of reasons. One is that's the appropriate power of and authorities that have been conferred. And the other is to frankly keep you out of becoming conflicted. Because you can only, during these hearings, you can only make decisions based on the evidence that's been put before you, not evidence that you yourself have gone out and gathered. So to the extent that that happens, you tend to take yourself out of the process, out of the quasi-judicial process, because now there's legitimate grounds to argue that you're conflicted.
That makes sense.
And you get to decide how much the town manager gets paid, unless the voters make that decision somehow for you. All right. That's pretty much my pitch.
Well, thank you very much.
Delegation authorities among you guys. There's other things in here. What time, what have we got for?
It's 7:17. I had told Jim roughly an hour, but there's flexibility, whatever the board
Which
wants
means
to
when?
do.
Which means when?
7:30.
Can you handle me for 7 minutes?
Sure, yeah.
All
Well,
right.
it's however long the board wants to. I mean, it's just a rough-
So I've also put in section 901 of Title 24 and 901 small a, which is a very convoluted statutes which attempt to deal with the topic of immunity. And Vermont has a long history of sovereign immunity, which is an immunity that is enjoyed by the entity, the town itself. And these are immunities from suit, sort of like the king can do no wrong. It's a holdover from British law. And it's been adopted and used down, through from the 1700s, even to the current day, because the legislature hasn't completely eliminated the concept of sovereign immunity. So it still gets applied judicially by the courts. And the idea is that to the extent that a town is acting within the sphere of its authority and acting as a municipal in a governmental as opposed to proprietary fashion, that the town itself is immune from money damages, from a lawsuit claiming damages. This is a little bit of an attempt to waive part of that immunity by requiring that lawsuits that are brought against individuals or that name individuals in municipalities. In the state of Vermont, at least for state claims, we're not talking federal claims here, but state claims need to be brought in the name of the town. So it takes the individual off the hook and requires that the town provide the defense and pay for and provide the defense of their agents. And to the extent that claims are being brought, and the town itself is going to waive its sovereign immunity to the extent that these claims involve municipal employees that are alleged to have done something wrong. But they get to pick up the immunity that the individual could assert in the same case. So in addition to sovereign immunity, there's something called qualified individual immunity that attaches to individuals that are doing their job within the scope of their authority, and they haven't violated clearly established law. So it basically is intended because municipal officials get put between a rock and a hard spot all the time. I mean, you think about cops, they're always between a rock and a hard spot. It basically says if it's a draw, if it's like not certain, it's unclear, so whether it's illegal, et cetera, they're entitled to assert immunity, and they should get out because of the difficult situations that they need to make, quickly on a moment's notice. So basically, this basically says those lawsuits are going to get brought against the municipality, but the municipality can now assert the individual's qualified immunity. Those are only for state claims. The other claims that almost always get attached to lawsuits are federal claims that are brought under federal statutes. Section 1983, which allows someone to sue for violating someone's constitutional rights. So to the extent that there's a clearly defined constitutional right, and the town or town agent has done something that violates an individual's right, Section 1983 says you can sue money damages and recover for those violations. You have to prove the damages, you got to go through a whole litany of stuff, but they're sort of federal tort claims is really what the concept is. But this basically is an immunity statute that gives municipal officials a break, because what was happening was that towns were getting out on their sovereign immunity, but these, poor municipal officials were told that they have to stay in the lawsuit and try their qualified immunity. And a couple times got tagged. One of them involved a snowplow driver, who had a whole bunch of snow blowing off the back and caused a huge accident, and he got tagged, but the town got out. So this was an attempt to sort of correct that.
Because the other thing, because it's coming in 901A, it's talking about that volunteer services requested by a legislative body or municipality are covered. So when we get into the Chester Constitution Committee goes out and does a trail, they're covered under this.
They certainly should be, and that would be a defense that would certainly get raised.
Yeah.
So to the extent that they've been named individually,
Yeah.
highly likely that the town attorney would say, can't do that.
Yeah.
Dismiss them individually.
Yep.
Claim is against the town, provided that they aren't acting willfully, maliciously, or outside the scope of their authority. Therein lies sometimes some factual questions that a judge might need to decide, and the judge might say, that's so close, I think I want to send that to a jury.
Yeah.
So does it make a difference whether they're a committee or a commission? Because the commission is the more formal organization, where a committee is just a group of volunteers.
Yeah, I don't know that a commission, help me with the commission. I know that you can form a commission, but the same thing, basic concept applies. You got to sue the town.
Yeah, a volunteer whose services has been requested by a legislative body.
Yeah. And commissions are usually, but there are commissions that are set up statutorily, but the same.
They have a little more formal authority.
At least the way we've done it here.
We're a committee.
Yeah.
You kind of defined it that way as a
No,
commission.
yeah, but the thing
Commission
is,
is a
if
point.
you were called volunteers, it sounds like you would be covered.
You would be,
But you're
but
gonna
there,
have, when you do road stuff, you would probably have to have more direction from Kirby.
yeah, but the,
I'm sorry, because we do a lot of trail stuff, and a lot of
Right.
times,
Right, they do.
without,
Right. RCCC is not, it's an independent group that is not appointed by the select board.
So it's not a statutory commission.
Correct,
No, it's a
Okay.
committee.
correct.
It's a committee that,
But they
well-
work collaboratively with the
Yeah,
town. They're
well-
just not a group appointed by.
yeah, well, therein would lie the
Correct.
factual question as to what's the nexus with the town? Have they
Right.
gone out with the town's blessing, for instance, to do work on town rights of way?
Right,
Right.
right. We
So-
And we,
might want to tighten up our process.
Well, we've had that discussion with the CCC all the time, and we weren't, I'm
Sorry,
sorry,
Lauren.
we
No,
weren't
that's
sure
okay.
about whether there was an advantage to being a committee or just a commission or just staying a committee.
I think that the language is about, regardless of what you call it, whether it's committee, commission, or friend, whatever you call it, if we're saying that you're volunteering at the request of
Yep.
right? So is someone on the housing commission serving at the request of this entity?
Well, yeah, that's clear
And-
because we appoint them.
Yeah, well, I think so.
Well, depending on what
But,
they're doing.
but I will
Depending on
also
what
say
they're
the
doing.
answer is always, it depends.
Yeah.
But.
Fair enough.
I'll keep that in mind.
But I do think for a group that isn't a commission or a committee, that is its own entity, where this group is saying, sure, it's okay with us if you go out and do that. I could hear the argument that is, you were not acting at the request. You acted with the blessing of the town, but that's not the same thing as at the request of the town. And I think, and I don't know the specifics.
You're right on
I
target.
think that's where the rub would come in terms of immunity for someone is, were we saying it's okay with us? Or were we saying we anoint you in some way as our,
So that anointing might come with the designation of being a commission. Because
Yeah,
then you're
yeah.
appointed, you're serving at the town's
at our
discretion
request?
all the time,
At
no
our
matter what
request.
you're doing.
Right.
And I'd be careful about those words.
Yeah.
Serving at
Yeah.
our discretion,
Yeah.
but rather saying serving at our request.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that gets into also a lot of, it's agency. Basically, it's an agency question, which is a very fact-intensive question. So the more that's being done under the penumbra of the select board,
Yeah.
the safer that's going to be. There are a lot of commissions that are actually designated by statute as commissions.
Right.
And those, pretty clearly, to the extent that you're filling those positions, that's a pretty good coverage. Those are statutory, planning commission or,
Right.
those sorts of things. But to the extent that there's work being done, it would be a good idea to be sure that the town is aware of, familiar with it, and actually blessing kind of the work that's going to be done.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Future conversation to tighten that.
Sure.
But those are questions and matters of liability, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here is exposure and liability. And whether there's going to be coverage either under the statutes and the immunity statutes that are here, as well, by the way, as under your passive coverage document, right? You want to make sure that anything being done by the town is something for which there is liability coverage.
We're insured for it.
And a lot of times that's a matter of picking up the telephone, talking
Keep them
to
in.
Kelly.
Yeah, exactly.
Those things can be dealt with though, and they can be, scriven so that there's clarity that you all have blessed whatever it is that's going on. All right, I think we're getting old and in the way at this point, at least I am.
Far from home.
But there is, just so you're aware, there is the municipal code of ethics that now exists, relatively recent legislation. And I know you have a conflict policy, which is great.
Yeah, We'll
by
be
the
working
way.
on the
But I
actual
think it would
ethics
be,
policy.
yeah, there might be some
Yeah.
things to work on
That's
there.
new.
That's the new thing,
Statute.
yeah, but we'll
Yeah.
keep the conflict of interest and we'll work on an ethics, because they are different. They are two different
And
policies.
speaking of commissions, there is now a state ethics commission to whom these sorts of things get referred. and people can go complain directly to the State Ethics Commission. My experience with them thus far is they really don't have any investigatory tools.
You and John Walters. You and John
So-
Walters.
Yes, so they tend to pick up the phone and refer it back to whoever it is at the town who's responsible for overseeing the ethics investigations.
That would be me. You
And
appointed me.
You have your town manager add to her list sewer, ethics.
Get all the good stuff. Get all the good stuff.
No, it's the state guy who gets the good stuff.
Yeah.
I just call somebody else and collect my check.
Delegated.
It's quite, give me the big bucks.
But I've experienced with other municipalities that situation coming back around. And because of the tension that existed, that was going on in the background, it became necessary to actually retain an outside investigator to go do the investigation and come back with a recommendation.
The state reimburses us for
And,
that.
and absolutely.
People line up to
Twice.
pay us.
Tell me, double it up, double or nothing. Which is enormously expensive. So being cautious and careful about how you deal with your own conflict of interest issues is
Big.
really great. And I think, getting in touch with somebody and talking it through, I'm happy to talk through conflict of interest issues with any of you.
Right.
So what does that look like for us as board members? Are we advised, or would we be advised to err on the side of caution relative to conflicts of interest, or?
I mean, there is, a lot of these are gut checks. A lot of them are. Where you need to be particularly careful, I think, is in any kind of adjudicative proceeding where you're sitting as a trier of fact.
Okay.
Where you're actually making a decision about whether to grant or not to grant a permit or employment or whatever it might happen, dog issues, whatever it might happen to be very careful about those situations, which are most of the situations, because you're a small town where you're getting out, you're hearing things, people want to stop you in the store, want to talk about this or that or the other thing. And you got to remember to go, wait, I really can't talk to you about this right now because I've got a matter coming in front of me. If you got something to say, you need to bring it to the meeting or the hearing.
Right.
That's particularly where I say exercise caution. If you're into a more legislative function, certainly you got to be cautious if there is any conflict of interest that as a result of the legislation or the ordinance that you're passing, which might benefit you, your spouse, your kids, your mom, your dad, any sort of,
That's tough in a small town.
it's a very tough. It is
I
tough.
mean, just look at taxes.
Yeah. Well, taxes, but there is,
Everybody.
yeah, there is, they do recognize that to the extent that you are voting on a regulatory authority that impacts everybody and you in the same way, that's not a conflict of interest. That's what you're here to do. That's what you're supposed to be here to do. But to the extent that there's a specific ordinance or a particular legislative act that you're taking, which involves the potential for more compensation coming to you, I would stop.
So it's,
Go
Sorry,
ahead,
go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was gonna say, is it limited to financial, or is it
Right.
any kind of benefit?
Well, it could be any kind of benefit. They tend to be financial. But it could be any kind of benefit, property, I mean, that's financial. Or, usually comes back around to some sort of benefit that's being conferred upon you.
Right. Okay. So hypothetical. So you had
Oh, man, I don't know about
You wanna go
it. Go for it, Tim. Go for it, buddy.
It depends. So we had a health order situation where, there was a house.
You had, I mean, are we talking about a particular?
History. I'm not gonna, it's in the past.
I still might not comment, but go ahead.
So let's just hypothetically, if I was a neighbor to that property and I was part of the vote, were we going to shut it down for a health order or not? Should I recuse?
I would say you should recuse. That's going to be a quasi judicial proceeding. I would definitely say you should recuse if you've ever complained about it, or you've ever opened your mouth, talked to anybody about it. I would say that that would be a basis in and of itself to recuse yourself in terms of, suggesting an outcome that should occur.
I think this ought to happen.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. I'm something,
Okay.
ranting and raving for sure. But I also think that if it is of such an impact to you, maybe a financial impact to you, because if
Well, you get into property values.
because of your property value,
Which is a
I
whole
would
other
think
topic.
that through carefully as to whether you can be fair, impartial, set all of that aside.
But on its face, without those discussions, the fact that in a small town, you live next to or near somebody, if every time that happened, you said you had to recuse yourself, we did.
Yeah.
Right.
We did.
No board
level.
Right.
But I think that.
It has to
that
be pretty obvious.
it's pretty easily tripped by I talked to somebody and said, this is making me crazy. And you don't have to have said much more than that
Yeah.
for it to be clear that you already had an idea how you were gonna rule.
You prejudged.
But there's no enforcement associated with that.
The enforcement is a little one thing.
Julie's the enforcer.
I'm just trying to think about it.
No, she's not.
Motorcycle.
I'm gonna ride it on my Harley and I'm gonna say,
Change his letter.
Tim, you need to recuse yourself.
Can I have the floor, please? My
Point of
thought is that, if somebody has had a conversation with somebody else, but are able to represent themselves in a fair and put aside all that stuff, then there's really no basis for not being involved in that particular conversation,
Yeah,
unless it has a direct financial or some other benefit.
I would say though, that anytime you're engaging with someone in pumping gas and they want to talk about something that's coming up in front of you that is a quasi judicial proceeding, and they just start down that road, you stop.
That's
Right, right.
easy if it's, we know it's coming.
Right.
But
Well,
if it hasn't,
When it
if it
doesn't
hasn't,
know
it's
it shouldn't,
coming.
And
Right.
they're in
That's
this kind of a
often the
gray area.
Yeah.
It's like, when is it that you reasonably should have known that this is what they're after, or this is what they're looking at? And that is all involved in detail.
or
What was
somebody
said?
says, 6 months ago, I talked to him and I told him I wanted this and now he's pushing for it.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't even remember that.
but as under this code of ethics, you have the opportunity to evaluate that on your own as a board member and say, I don't think this is recusing me. It doesn't change my mind at all. I'm perfectly impartial and perfectly capable of hearing the evidence and doing it based on the evidence. There was nothing that said that, caused me to make up my mind. I'm going to continue. And then you can do that. Now, the only possible ramification is that a majority of your board members said, what, are you kidding me?
And you could still say, no, really.
They can still say, no, really. That's
That
right.
happens.
That's right. But they have the opportunity to then say, we think that you should, and even to pass a motion to that effect, if they choose to do that.
So could we force someone?
No.
No.
Yeah.
It's still up
They're
to the
elected
individual.
officials.
You're just making it
make a
public.
statement.
You can make a
Yeah.
statement
Yeah.
and you're making it
Yeah.
in
You can
public.
have it on record that all of your peers said that they thought you should.
Yeah.
And you went ahead.
You were the defiant child.
And then when the town gets sued, you have immunity.
Well,
But somebody can file an ethics complaint against you, and then it comes to me, and then I ride in on my Harley.
exactly. That generates an ethics claim, but also potentially generates a due process claim. Particularly if you were absolutely necessary, if you're the third vote.
Yeah.
That could create a due process issue.
Probably.
So you need to think about that.
Okay. There's a lot of common sense in there.
Yeah.
Is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
If you were deciding, let's say, about whether to put a driveway next to my house, I'd recuse myself.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Just so you know.
Just hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Yeah.
Not that that would ever happen.
Not that that would ever.
Small town.
Yeah.
Any other
Rough
questions?
town.
Any other questions, for
Yeah.
Jim? I did have one.
That would be-
No, I did have one. There is a lot of gray in when I should bring something to the board and when it is my decision to make. There's a whole huge, big, fat area of gray there.
Good.
Um,
That's a good question.
and I have tried very hard over my 7 years to figure out when that is, when that's not. Is there any like rule of thumb? Is that just a conversation for me to have with the board to say, what is your expectation of that? Like, is there any guidance on that?
Let's see. How to
Because there are
answer
times
that
I
one.
can think when I probably should have brought something to the board and didn't.
Yeah,
Or made a decision on my own where afterwards it was kind of like, yeah, that might have needed a board
yeah,
discussion.
yeah.
Because you get in the middle of everything and just get going,
Right.
you know?
Right. Part of that, I think, is going to depend upon distinguishing whether you want to go to the board just to inform them
Right,
about what the hell it is that's going on around town. Because there's an issue coming up that, these 5 people might need to deal with
Right.
someone
Heads
coming
up on,
at
right.
them out on the street
right.
and kind of being bowled over by something they don't know anything about.
Mhm.
So that, and that takes, I think, your nuance
Mhm.
to sort out when it might be that it's a good idea to inform. Now, the issue with informing is, of course, whether to inform an open session
And that's always
or
my
whether to
dilemma.
inform an executive session
Yeah.
and how that information should be passed on and
Yeah.
handled.
Yeah.
The way I would start with that is to go to Lee,
Okay,
who's the chair.
Yep.
And say basically as the initial contact with the
Mhm.
select board, not that you don't have contact with all of them, but
Yeah,
this
this
is
may be
just
coming,
wanting
yeah.
you to know that I am dealing with this.
Yep.
It may come to your attention at some point in time. Is it time in your estimation to kind of let the board know what's
Mhm.
going on? And then the second issue is, do we do it in executive session or
Right,
not?
right.
And, that is going to be a question of whether there's an exemption.
Mhm. Right.
That exists, and some of it might be clear. To the extent it isn't, you can, I think, pick up the phone and call the town attorney
Mhm.
and start to have a conversation about it. And whether some advice might need to be given,
Mhm.
because that itself might create a basis for going into
Right, with
executive
the legal
session.
counsel, yep, okay.
But, all of that needs to be looked at in connection with the individual
Mm-hmm.
issues. So to the extent that you're really just looking to pass information on because it's your decision to make, at least
Mhm.
initially,
Mhm.
that I think is the way I think about it,
Okay.
Julie.
Okay.
If it's something that really needs to come before the board, because they're gonna need to vote on it.
Well, exactly,
that's-
then that's easy,
that's
that's
easy,
easy,
yeah.
right, correct.
I second the no surprises.
Yeah.
That when you can tell, which won't be all the time,
Right.
if you can tell that this is something that
Agreed.
somebody at the
Agreed.
gas pump is gonna say, have
Right.
you heard about? You don't want us going.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Right, and then but then it's figuring out how to tell you that, because
Yeah.
not everything is fit for an
Yeah.
open meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
And I agree that I'd err on the side of informing.
Yeah,
More is better than
yeah,
less.
agreed.
But you do need to be aware of what you're saying and who you're saying it to,
Right,
and whether what you're saying is covered by an attorney-client
Right.
privilege or otherwise is going to be protected if litigation gets
Exactly.
filed.
Right.
So, all of this, we're the public.
Yeah.
We're open to the purview of the public, as we should be. But there are some things that it's important to be kept confidentially
Yeah.
in the best interest of the public.
I'm sure your town attorney would be glad to help you figure out. what-
Oh, I talk to Jim all the
absolutely.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's just one of those things that
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a great question, though.
because
And
it's the
that's-
gray area that town managers
Yeah.
fall into, and also get caught.
And also, yeah, because you're in the heat of the moment
Correct.
dealing with something.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't want to give you one of those just cause things.
You can always say, wait, I told you this was gonna happen.
Is that your worry?
No, it's not, but I
Thank
thought it
you,
was
Jim.
funny.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
That's right.
It's great to see all of you again. Good to see you, Lee, again.
Yeah.
And
Thank
Ray.
you for coming down.
Jim,
Seeing you guys. Jim, take care.
and I'm gonna be using you. for some advice.
It depends.
I love it.
That's all the legal advice
Careful,
I
it
need.
can take a lot of time suddenly. You may suddenly wonder what happened to the last 2 years, but I asked you just to do a little bit of work. for
Yeah,
them.
after-
Could
what I'm
you
really
just
doing
look
is
for, just look for this one?
Because I'll be calling you up saying, so what's the key number on this?
No, goodness, yes. Well, there are some I may remember, most of them will be gone, but yeah.
All right, gang.
Safe travels.
Onward. I'm sorry to have
Thank
taken
you.
so much of your time,
No,
but
Oh,
good.
so
another-
glad to be with you.
Want another fizzy water to go?
No, I think I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to stop
He has to drive.
at least 2 times on the way home.
We have a restroom before you head out. But thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you,
Good luck
Jim.
for the rest of the night, and it's great seeing you.
Likewise.
We'll be talking.
All right. Good luck.
Thanks, Jim.
You too.
Thank you.
Take care.
Next on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our April 1st, 2026 Select Board meeting. I entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
There was a motion. Do I have a second? Arnie is a second. Any comments, concerns, corrections?
I had none.
No.
Seriously, Arnie's looking at me.
Peter?
No.
So I had,
2 periods. And a
page
comma.
2 on line 37, Jewett Road should be spelled with 2 E's, not an E and an I.
Oh, I missed that.
And that was all I had.
All right. All right.
Okay, anything else? All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Excellent, thank you. Next is citizens' comments. If there's anyone who would like to comment on something that is not on the agenda, now is your opportunity to do so. You can see the room is packed, so move on to liquor license and entertainment approvals. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Do the 2 entertainments by themselves.
Okay, so we're gonna do the 2 entertainment license requests, Stonehearth Inn and Eatery and Pizza Stone, Vermont for entertainment. I would entertain a motion to approve these 2 entertainment license requests. So Lawrence made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Peter's a second. Any further discussion, comments, concerns? All in favor of these entertainment licenses, please signify by saying aye
Hey,
Aye.
and
Aye.
sign where noted. Anyone against?
Peter, is that your barn?
no,
Is that the camera?
no, that's my, pump
Oh, okay.
whining. It said, oh, you
You all
had
right?
pizza. Yeah, you had all those carbohydrates, dude. What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Keep giving me insulin. Quit whining.
And then we have a tobacco license and tobacco substitute endorsement for Jiffy Mart and the Dollar General tobacco license. So I'll entertain a motion for approving both of those.
Let's get 3 here. There's 3.
Jiffy Mart has tobacco and tobacco
Tobacco
substitute,
substitute.
and then Dollar General has tobacco.
Yes. I think that's what I said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I-
So okay, so Tim's made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Peter's a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Excellent.
Next is Safe Roads for All grant.
Yes, so, this is I have talked with each of you, but, felt this should, come before you as a group. So this is a grant opportunity that was presented to me last week. Safe Roads, for All program is, a federal grant program. It was funded for a 5-year block, federally. This is also, a grant that spins off from the Safe Roads for All grants that many regional planning commissions applied for and created a safety action plan. Chester signed on to that a couple of years ago when the regional, I think maybe even last year, when the regional planning, was it Russian? When they did a survey of all the crash data, regional planning came, did a presentation, we signed on to that. This is because we are a part of that, it gets us even greater priority points with this one. So what this grant does, is it would fund, the planning process and what they call demonstration tasks, which are basically mock-ups, for the discussion of regionalizing EMS and fire services. It's connected to roads in that it is after crash, a post-crash resolution is what it comes down to. You bring in a regional partner. Our regional partner to start off with would be Springfield Hospital. Transfer services are part of this, as well as 911 services. So it would be, we have been talking about regionalizing and having that discussion for a number of years. It's just hard to get, it's expensive to get a consultant in to help you navigate that. And then nothing ever pays for mock-ups. You never get to try it. This grant funds the whole thing. So the application, we would be applying for the maximum, which is 3 million. When I talked to you all individually, I told you there was no match. There is a match. However, the reason that I was initially told no match is because the match is all in kind. So, and goes way beyond. So the way the match works is anytime that we respond to a motor vehicle accident, vehicles, manpower, labor, vehicles, all of that are included as your match hours. When that patient then gets to Springfield Hospital, all of their expenses related to that are included as your match. So you will go well beyond what your match is actually required. So they consider it a no match. Because there's just never any.
Doing it anyway.
Correct. There's never any cash layout. In addition, we would also be able to, because it goes beyond what our actual layout of labor would be, there is also the ability to claim your own labor as part of your expense. So there is the possibility of reimbursement later. The one of the very exciting parts of it is, even though it's technically considered a planning grant, you are allowed to purchase all the capital equipment you need to do your demonstrations. So if part of our demonstration is a transfer service, we can buy a transfer vehicle utilizing the grant.
Wow.
We can fully outfit that with the monitors and all the things that are needed.
It's going to go fast.
Yes. So you would really, I mean, the advantage would be you would want to use your labor to cover your matches, and then you get whatever capital equipment is needed to do your demonstrations. That's exactly what you would want to
With
do.
no restrictions though, I mean, you already have.
Oh,
a
there's
vehicle for
restrictions.
that. So I mean, you can't just dump everything and buy everything new.
No, you can't just say, oh, we've got this brand new ambulance, but we're going to get rid of this one and say we need a new one. But our A2 is at a place where we're going to have to start putting money into it.
As long as it's,
You know,
Justifiable.
correct, absolutely.
Okay.
That's the key to it. This particular grant, it would be a great grant for us. It would be a great program. It would be one of the only grants that I know of that would fund what we've been talking about and give us the opportunity to try it. The demonstrations could involve all kinds of scenarios. You know, do you start having a conversation with Bells Falls? Or do you have a conversation with Ludlow? That they could be two different demonstrations that you mock up. Or is it just us with Springfield? That would be another demonstration. There's all kinds of scenarios. You would start with your consultant and work out what demonstrations you want to come up with. That's part of the funding. And then part 2 of the funding is now you're going to demonstrate. So it's a grant that works very different than grants that we are used to dealing with. Your complete project scope is not defined at the time of application. The actual scope of your project is developed as you are going through your planning process. So it's different than what we are used to. This grant is one where I would not write this. I would not be successful writing this. There is a grant writer that is very successful. I met with him on Tuesday, along with our chief and another staff member who is very familiar with this program. He's the one that brought it to me. We had a meeting with him. He's the one that shared all these other details about capital. And he was excited because his comment was he's always wanted to do this in Vermont because Vermont is one of the only states left that does not regionalize. And there's potential for it, but no Vermont municipality has ever applied for this grant. So Vermont is one of the few states that has never utilized this. And so he's like, you guys are a shoo-in for this. You know, I'm like, great, well then just call them and give me the money. We have the potential to be very successful on this.
So, to formulate my question here.
Well,
So if we're working with other towns, we're assuming other towns will want to work with us. Let
We
me
know
start
the couple
with
that do, yes.
We know that they do.
Yeah.
So if we got the money, we would administer the demonstration, working with those other
It'll
towns.
all be
It
funded
would
through us.
all come through here.
It'll all come through us. Now, on the side of we would hire this company to do the grant writing. We will also hire this company to do the grant management, which is covered by the grant. So that's not money that we're paying. They're reimbursed through the grant. This is a whole different type of grant. And just the way that they calculate match is like, huh? You can do that? So we would want them because they're the ones who are going to get every dime for us. And they're the ones that are going to say, this is something you can do. This is something you can't do. So we would want their services in this.
As far as we know, none of these other towns that we're talking about doing the demonstration with are applying
No.
for the grant.
No.
you said Charlestown had turned it down.
So Charlestown was awarded this grant, I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then they had a changeover in their leadership. They don't have a town manager, they're a select board. They had a change in their leadership. There was some internal stuff going on that I wouldn't want to say in public, but there's some internal stuff going on. And when they were awarded, this granting agency got it for them. They were awarded using Springfield Hospital as their regional partner, which would be our regional partner. And yeah, they refused the grant.
So transportation, what I go to once a month, the Safe Roads grant, we worked on it for a year.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's kind of the key that gets you into the next level. And
Yeah.
this is, so we're kind of hitting the next level now, but it's not the only thing that'll probably come down from that.
Having that first connection that you're
First
talking about
connection.
opens other doors also
Yeah,
besides.
because what it did was it developed data.
Yeah. So part of this grant is if we didn't have this phase already done,
Right.
a big part of our grant would have to be developing crash data. But that's done for us.
Yeah, right.
That whole piece is done. So now we get to focus on just how we're going to work with that
So
crash
we can
data.
really maximize the effectiveness of the money.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And right now, in this there's one more round after this, I think, but this round, public safety public safety departments are what are being focused on in this particular round, and we are a public safety department.
So the goal of something like this, besides the consolidation, is to provide better service for all the area
Right.
and the town here and the people around here,
Correct.
and hopefully at a better cost
Correct.
because you're
Right.
consolidating
Correct.
also.
Correct. But even if the end result, often the end result with regionalization is not saved money. That's often not the result, but what you will have for your same dollars is a far advanced care, which is what you want. It's continuity of care. It is It is, preventing death. It's all of those types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hooker that's really strange in this is the fact that ambulances don't make money, but everybody charges for them. And that's the one that I think is gonna kind of, nobody's gonna want to give up their money in their territory. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
For me, the reason to do this is that it lets us see whether we want to do the next step without having to spend
Our money.
anything.
Exactly.
And all of the concerns that will happen after we have all of that evidence about, do we really want to continue
Yeah.
with it? Do we want to do it?
Yeah.
Will it be good for us? How else, you don't get those answers when you have to spend so much money to get them.
Right.
This just sounds like a gift.
Yeah, that's why they all stopped dead in the water. And the conversation is coming, right? It is only a matter of time. Regionalization is going to happen. It is being modeled in other environments that are not the same as Southern Vermont towns. So it's coming. Regionalization of certain services is down the road. The fear is that if you're a town that's not prepared for it, you're going to get stuck with something that doesn't work for your
It was
community.
shoved down your throat.
And it doesn't work for you. So this is a great way for us to say, we're going to try it. Oh, look, this works for us. It could be a model for other areas of the state. But, my focus is us, right? So how can we get better, improved care for our residents, for our folks, and for our region at a cost that our taxpayers can afford? Some of these departments are just, the requirements are getting out of control. But there are services you've got to have, so anyway, so I don't need a motion, but again, it's a big project. Number one, we would have a grant writer, and that grant writer would be the one managing it, because I would not have the time or capacity for this
It's a
one.
great incentive for him to write a good grant.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And he's waived most of their fees. They have waived, knowing that I would be giving them this as, you're managing the grant. We're not. That's where their money is made. Grant writers make their money on the management, not the grant writing. So, yeah.
So are there any upfront fees at all?
So there is the grant writing fee, which I had originally, when the person that told me about this cost, or what they had done in Charlestown, that fee was $10,000. It has gone up, it's 15. We feel that we can cover it through each of the three departments have a little money that they know that they can pull from some trainings that they know are not going to happen this year. They can pull, but then we also have the grant fund that we fund $40,000 for seed money. I would take it from that because there's several grants we won't be writing this year, so we will not need that seed money.
So you said 3 departments. Earlier you said fire and ambulance.
So it's fire and ambulance, but police will get the benefit of training because our police department is cross-trained.
Right.
So they will get the added benefit of training. It will not look at regionalizing police, but they'll get the added benefit of training under this, which will be great. So they would pull some of their training money too.
There's other things, just as we got this open right now. We have Otis back at regional planning. And Otis has already spotted a couple pockets of federal money that he's starting to claw at.
Yeah.
So we could have
Other opportunities coming.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good opportunity. And
Yeah, I hate to pass it up, but it is a big project if we get it. But it would not be managed by me, so it wouldn't be added to my plate. And it would just, I think it would be great to see how it works.
And just to reiterate and for clarity, so that you're saying the 15,000 could come out of existing training
Correct.
budgets
Yes.
and our grant.
And the grant fund,
Grant
which is
fund.
what we have it there for. So
So
it's
there's not going to hit the budget.
correct.
It's a conversation we've been having for at least 5, 6 years, even more, but we never realized the first step or what do we do to
How do you
get there.
start?
And this one's going to provide all those options and steps that we had no really idea on how to go get there and help guide us in the right direction and stuff. I think it's a wonderful opportunity.
So
Sure sounds like it.
pleasure of the board.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Makes sense to me.
Okay, I will proceed.
Thank you.
You agree?
I agree, yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's a great opportunity for us to, figure out where we want to go and be at the leading edge of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Next is executive session of discussing the negotiation of a purchase and sale agreement for the solar field. And so I will,
Make the motion this time?
if you'd like to, do you have the?
I have it right here.
Go right ahead then.
Save your voice a little bit. I move to find that the premature general public knowledge of confidential attorney-client communications for the purpose of providing professional legal services relative to the purchase and sale agreement for the purchase of a solar field would place the town of Chester at a substantial disadvantage.
So Tim has made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
So Arnie's a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
I move to enter into executive session for the purpose of reviewing communication from town council regarding the purchase and sale agreement for the purchase of a solar field pursuant to 1 VSA 313 1F. Motion to include inviting the town manager, Julie Hance.
Tim has made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
So Warren's seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of entering into executive session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. We are in executive session.
All right. in, if there's anybody still on. Oh, there is.
That's good or bad?
I'm trying to get at least 6 in a row.
Okay.
So we are out of executive
Two on two
session
up.
and we just have one more piece of business, and that is to authorize Julie to sign the contracts related to the purchase of the solar. So there's 3 different documents. There's a bill of sale, an assignment and assumption agreement. There's a termination and release document and the asset purchase agreement. So I will entertain a motion to allow Julie to sign each one of these documents.
So moved.
So Tim is the motion. Do I have a second?
Okay.
Arnie's a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Excellent, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. Things like that.
And that's the end of our agenda. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
We're gonna do new business?
Not on the agenda.
On the agenda, that's what we were adding.
Oh,
But that motion failed.
motion failed. No, the motion failed for Act 181. I thought new.
Well, that was-
We could have added it.
Yeah, we have no new business.
No, no, business.
No new agenda.
Correct. Well, it's still on this. Well, we should have had it right at the beginning.
No, I'm talking about having that as an agenda item at the next meeting if you still
Oh,
feel so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just-
yeah. I think he's, are you asking about something different, though?
No,
Were you wanting to discuss something different?
no, I don't want to
Okay.
discuss putting what's on the next agenda.
Got it.
Yes.
What is on the next agenda?
As we said, I believe the last time I heard we were doing financial stuff.
Financials will likely be on the next agenda. Deb, is in full force and effect. This is the completion of her second week or almost the completion of her second week. So we're hoping to have everything, just some stuff. So it will either be the first, one in May or the second one in May, but it will definitely be in
Can we
May.
have the last one in the fourth quarter of 25?
Yes. Yep. Let me write that down, Peter. I won't remember it. Okay.
No signing twice?
Oh, I saw.
Anything else?
No?
So
There's no other agenda items.
okay, so I asked for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Tim and Lauren, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Excellent. Thank you so much. Been a long meeting. I appreciate all your patience.